Hello, welcome back to the Scroll Ensemble Classical Music Improvisation channel. This week I'm talking to Tina Chancey, a gambist, improviser and improvisation teacher from the States who deals with a lot of different styles and also gives us an interesting perspective of some of the history of improvisation in the US.
I had an interesting childhood in music. I had two disabilities I didn't understand. One was ADD, which made it hard to focus, and the other was that my eyes didn't work together, so I had no depth perception. Which means that when someone demonstrates to you this way, and you're facing them, you can't tell what they're doing. So they thought I was stupid and untalented. And I, however, I persevered. So I was a bad violinist and then a bad violist all through my childhood, always thinking there was something better. And without improvisation, I would have really been stuck. As a matter of fact, the first teacher that did any good said, "Oh, forget about the music. Copy me. Just do this. Now change it." And there we were improvising. And that was the first person to have made any good. But I picked up the viola da gamba in college, and the rest is probably history. So when I was in my 20s, I was in an improvisation group, and it was called Quag. It was run by Eric Saltzman, who is an improviser and composer in New York. And there were singers and dancers and instrumentalists in this group. And it was cross pattern or platform improvisation. So the performances had an aspect of a duet where there would be three duets, one with a trombone and a singer, and one with a dancer and a banjo, and that was interesting. And then we would do set pieces that people created. And I created a kind of an improvisation structured on Jabberwocky that started out just with consonances. So you'd say the poem, but just the consonances in the poem. And you'd add vowels so that by the climax, you'd hear all the words. Snicker snack, right? And then you'd end up speaking the poem, and that was a resolution. And so you'd end up with just vowels, right? So you start with just consonants, you end up with just vowels, and that progression would be mirrored by a choir of musicians and dancers, and it was a wonderful piece to do with audience members. We would spend our Tuesday evenings improvising with a group called Free Life Communication, who did free improv. So, and for example, Fred Renz, who ran the ensemble for early music in New York, he would say things like, "Okay, we're going to do an Elizabethan jig, and we're going to do a whole, concert half on these 5 tunes in this key. And do this one 8 times, and do this one 12 times, and do this one 18 times. And okay, I would have no musicianship if it were not for improvisation. It saved my skin in the pandemic to be an improviser, because it turned out I was thinking when the pandemic started, what can I do that would keep me alive? Well, I could teach. Well, what could I teach that people would want to know? Turns out, and maybe you found this too, that they wanted to know more about improvisation. They had the time, they had the energy, they wanted to do something hard. So it was wonderful for me not only to provide a livelihood, but to provide a really good group of friends, because I did beginning classes in improvisation, and then I made an advanced group, and that advanced group stayed together for 2 years. So it was really, a wonderful thing to do. But musically speaking, I don't always play jazz, though. Actually, in my last job, I did play jazz on my viola da gamba. Yes, the lineup was viola da gamba, jazz piano, and kora. A very interesting job. But for the most part, we work with repeating basses, and so improvisation is terribly important. And in the silent film work that I do, there's a lot of improvisation, which you take a tune, you improvise over that tune. As you watch the movie, you change what you're doing according to what you see in the movie. So, and so there's a lot of improvisation there, as well as in the old time music and the Irish music and the other musics that I play, country dance, tunes. There's nothing to do but to do it, as far as I'm concerned. But again, I'm writing an article for the American Recorder Society magazine on that topic right now, that I still don't know that a lot of Americans really understand that improvisation in early music is a lot to do with learned patterns, which then are repeated and transformed and stuff. And it's not that you're not creative, but the ideal of improvisation in America has a lot to do with the no wrong note, approach to everything is great. Do whatever you want and be in time and in tune, express yourself. Well, that's very good, but that historic improvisation is about more than that. And so when you train, you basically, you choose and here, now I'm answering finally your question. You choose a corner, from G to C in this particular improvisation, repeating bass pattern, and you practice with this one place in mind. You practice creating something new in the first two bars, because the last two bars are basically the cadence figure, and or you practice doing the cadence figure in this particular key and getting to this particular place. So I give myself specific tasks and then do them in time, and mess up a lot. I think that tension of not knowing what you're going to do is part of the energy of improvisation, and if you prepare so much that there's none of that, there's no anxiety, there's no, anticipation, that you're just doing something that you've done 100 times before. I don't know, that isn't really improvisation to me. I know there's a recorder player who shall be nameless, who basically, he repeats what he does, what he's done forever on these same things. And it's not that there's any choice really anymore. He has this well-worn path, and that to me is not as improvisatory as some other things, So maybe a middle ground of being familiar with the bass and understanding the pitfalls, because almost every bass pattern has an issue to somewhere, doesn't it? It has, oh, you go from this chord to that chord, or oh, it's a relative major, or and how many times do you find yourself, you've got a G minor chord and you're doing it's an E flat major, so you're doing E flat major, it's G minor, and enough of the keys notes really match that you're not worried. But if you do that too much, it really blurs the pattern. I did want to say the first improvisation, early music improvisation I heard was the Studio Fruhe Musik, and at Hunter College. And first, these guys came out without any music, and then this woman in leather pants came out with a little book that just had the words, and they proceeded to make stuff up. And each song was, they sang all the verses of the song. So there were, 10, 15 verses. And one piece would last for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And I just remember how remarkable that was, because at the time, Pro Musica was doing its wonderful stuff of introducing early music to American audiences. But a lot of times it would go with the audience's expectations, and there would be things like somebody would play bass crumb horn and sopranino recorder. You know, people would do that at the same time. Like El Griot was big in the Pro Musica, and they would show off and that, and they would improvise. You know, but it would be kind of silly. They would try to be silly. So people who took it very seriously were a surprise to me. And that was maybe 1970, 1968, 70, when I was first in New York. Well, that was for a very particular performance. Um, the In Series, which is a local theater group, did a performance of Toni Morrison's Desdemona, which is the story of Othello from Desdemona's point of view. And it had a variety of different styles of music. We used the music of Nina Simone. We used African prayers and chants. And we used early music. We used Baroque music by Barbara Strozzi. We did a large amount of ostinato bass work. And so the people putting the concert together, or the program together, was a play. They made this group of people ready to play it. And playing with the jazz pianist was wonderful because I hadn't really been around somebody who was so responsive as an improviser and yet so creative. So it was great. Her name was Janelle Gill. And again, she's a local pianist. And then the third person playing the kora and the djembe. And there were two singers. And one of them was good at both jazz and early music. And she started mixing the two in the middle. So, yeah, so it was and she was a great improviser. So it was a wonderful improvisation fest. But we didn't find a whole lot of separation, between the early music and the jazz. It was all melodically focused and, tonal, modal, actually.
Well, thank you so much for
Sure.
your time and for all your great, inspiring answers.